I don't know. If you pulled off a miracle like this, I wouldn't begin to believe in you. I'd believe in you. Hey, man, you did that. Now maybe the cynic goes, well, show me another one. And that's kind of what happens in Jesus' story, right? They keep looking for more of it. But it just always strikes me funny. That phrase turns up a few times in the Gospels. They began to believe in him. You began? What more do you want? And Jesus at several points says a version of that. But in the end, what he does, of course, is a great sign. In John's Gospel, that's the word for miracle, sign in Greek, semeion. They're signs. They're pointing you to something. In and of themselves, they're not super important. Creating, 600 to 800 bottles of wine is not really all that impressive. At some point, they all get drank, and you're back to going, where's the wine? So, right? It's not a really powerful sign, if you want. It's just a sign. Any more than I tell this joke a lot when I say, what's the most important sign here in this church space? And people, the altar, the tabernacle, the people, the candles, whatever. And I always say, no, the most important sign is the exit sign. Because it's what we do out there with what happens in here that's the most important. But in the end, they're just signs. And this is a sign of abundance. As is often the case, when Jesus feeds the 4,000 or 5,000, depending on the story, there's these different examples of him feeding them. One other thing that consistently shows up is he made too much. He miracled too much. They had to collect the fragments. And we need remember, there were no Tupperware salesmen at the time. There was no way to store this. It's actually quite wasteful what he did. This is probably quite wasteful what he did. It's abundance. That's the importance that the sign keeps pointing to, is abundance. And so then the question becomes, how are you and I a sign of God's abundance? And I don't know about you, but I'm not enough. I'm not enough a sign of that. And that's its own issue, isn't it? We often live out of a space of scarcity. It's just the nature of the way that the world we live in operates. If I have some and I give to you, then I have less. And it starts to create a little anxiety around, well, if I give you too much, now I don't have, and all we've done is flip roles. Whatever the thing is, it could be money, it could be food, it could be clothes, it could be property, it could be anything. It doesn't matter. But the thing about God's calculus, if you want, is when you give, you have more. When we give of ourselves, of our time, talent, and treasure, you end up with more. It's the paradox of the thing. And it's why Jesus said at several points in each of the Gospels, if you want to save your life, you've already lost it. But if you'll give it up for my sake, nobody can take it from you. That does not make sense in the physical space. If you gave up your life, you would lose it. That's just the way it works. But in the way that God operates, well, the opposite is true. And so when we look at that idea of abundance, and then I think you and I often live more out of a space of scarcity, that we're aware that we're not enough, or we don't have enough. Coming off my Philippines trip, this always happens, and it's like God's little trick on me, I don't think, which is you come back and your clock's all screwed up. They're 13 hours ahead, and that the day you come back is always bizarre. So I left Korea at 9:30 a.m. on Monday, and 13 and a half hours later, landed in Detroit 45 minutes before I left on Monday, because you go over the date line backwards. And so it's a really long day. It is. And then, you just spend a couple days of zombie-like living. And then you have a couple good days and you're like, I got this. I'm back, baby. Nope. Last night, up till 2 a.m., wide awake. I'm sure some of it was lamenting the Lions' loss, but minimally. In reality, though, in what starts in my head, are all those tapes around where it's insufficient and where I'm not sufficient. And you start playing those messages of the ways in which I know I'm not enough. Maybe ways I feel like I'm letting people down, or I missed opportunities, and I didn't clean up that space, or I didn't get this thing done, and and you can just barely stop that. But that's the language of the insufficiency, to feel like I don't have enough. Scarcity. It's very dangerous. And I often say, like I said, I think the devil has a lot of tricks in his pocket. Remember, the devil can't create. This is not something that only God can create. And so what darkness does is just plays at that anxiety and that fear in us. I don't have enough time. I didn't get enough sleep. Insert it all, I didn't get to this thing at work. And you come home. I was reading one of those books about getting up at 5 a.m. I think that's a novel concept. But one of the things that book talked about was making your bed every day, something I have never understood. But one of his points was, but you know what? When you get home, if you accomplish nothing else in the day, you have a visual representation that you started your day with success. They're like, oh, that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. So I did it for like 4 days, but I'm back to not doing it. And I feel bad about it, right? Isn't that the trick in of itself? That's New Year's resolutions. Hey, we're going to do this. Right? Then we don't. The abundance of God, the way that we feel the scarcity of our life, of our resources, of our opportunities to love and serve. And I guess the word I want to insert in its place is sufficiency. And sufficiency isn't about measuring something. It's really about just an attitude in a way in which you look at things. It becomes an opportunity to go, God is enough in my life, and God's put all these signs into the story of our salvation history that's about abundance. It's about more than enough. And I want to live in a way that testifies to that. This trip to the Philippines, I had a couple profound experiences. One was getting to go spend time with the family of my friend that was killed just before Christmas, and to go to his province where people don't visit. So just going there was its own gift to them. Foreigners don't visit. I ended up going to the police station to kind of learn more about the accident and what happened. And every police officer, they come out of the woodwork and they want to take a picture. And initially they were just taking pictures of me, not with me, just taking pictures of me. And I had a translator there. It's northern Mindanao. It can be a little dangerous, so I didn't want to go alone. And so I had some friends with me. But I said to the translator, what are they doing? And he said, they have to document that you're here because foreigners don't come here. Oh, maybe I'm going up on the wall. I don't know. But spending time with my friend's family and those that love him and being present there, that's more than enough. I couldn't fix their heartache. I can't fix their problems. But why I bring up that example is they laid out a feast for me, and they are very poor. And there's a word for it in the culture, bayanihan. Bayanihan is this idea of like those who have little are always more concerned about those who have even less. And so they on some deep level of their marrow have bought into sufficiency in knowing the abundance of God, so that they laid out all this food. They had said, what are your favorite Filipino foods? I wasn't thinking, so I kind of went through this list. Every last one of the things I said were there. And many of them are not cheap, right? And so I felt that sense of love and connection. And I was like, I had to kind of do it under the table, but I'm like, I'm paying for this because they don't have the money for that. And I didn't want them to do that for me. And yet I saw the love of that moment, which was expressed not in a concern of, well, what will we do if we provide this for him? It was just bayanihan. The root of that is bayan, which is city or community. And it's to say, we give without any expectation of it being returned. And there was just one other example that happened. I picked up a new scholar for our association, and he comes from nothing, absolutely nothing. And the only phone that he has is literally held together with Scotch tape. I did take a picture of it. Like the screen completely comes off, so he has it Scotch taped on, and it barely works. And so I offered him through the scholarship to get him a new device because he needs it for college. He needs it for projects and stuff. And he said no. He said no. And I was shocked. I mean, if the shoe was on the other foot, I'd be like, sweet, give me a new device. And his thought was no. And you know why? Because he knows of 2 other scholars that also need the same device. And it's funny, he didn't say anything about the need to get everyone a device. He just said, no, that's okay. But once I became aware of that information, then it was an opportunity. Again, then I had to confront it. Oh, do I have enough to get all 3 of them a device? Yes, I do. Okay, so then we can make that change. But I don't think that way. And I have to practice that more if I want that to be my spirit, if I want that to be my instinct. St. Francis de Sales used to say that devotion is just the general inclination to do what we know is pleasing to God. That's a very simple sense, isn't it? That's devotion. It's just the general inclination to do what we know is pleasing to God. But I would submit to you, I'm not generally inclined to do very much. There's a lot that can keep me from a general inclination. My preferences are the things I want or the ways I want to control things. By the way, and I need to confess this again, I had dinner with some parishioners last night, and we were talking about that there are 2 homilies people request me to send them links for, and the one was what I call shaving. I gave this homily about almost cutting off my face, and the other was called traffic. And I am convinced if I don't make it to heaven, it's going to be because of that stupid light at Harbor Town Place. I have just unmitigated rage about that light. I'm just confessing it to you now. It got me again this morning. I need to let it go. But it's really hard because it's stupid. It makes no sense to me at this hour of the day. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, abundance and sufficiency. Many of you are doing this because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Does anyone know the traffic engineer? We can fix this today. I'm done. God, abundance, sufficiency. God, abundance, and sufficiency. There's just so much in us that can't help but notice what isn't there or what we want to be there, but we don't control most of it. And my heart just keeps getting slapped around in the best sense possible. And even something like the stupid traffic light where I just go, I can't control that. And I need to be looking and focused on the abundance of God and the sufficiency in my life. In this Eucharist is an abundance. In each little host is the full presence of Christ. Body and blood, soul and divinity offered to us. I bring this up a lot. No one's ever asked me for 2. The body of Christ. I have 2. Take one home, to-go bag. No. Y'all get 1. Why? Because it's abundant. It's all that we need. And we take that within us, and it begins to change who we are. Just as I said, I want to practice bianeon. I want to practice the abundance of God in all my relationships and laugh a little bit at where I don't. Not so much get angry about it, just kind of laugh at my fear, my anxiety around, well, I got to make sure these things all fit. In the end, it's this story. It's Mary pushing Jesus into action. It's the reality that this wine, this ridiculous amount of wine, is a sign to us of God's abundance. And so can you and I live in a way that speaks to his abundance and live in a way that our lens is the sufficiency of God, which is not a measurement. It's just a way of thinking. It's a way of living. It's a way of doing. And it impacts how we help and love and serve each other. And those are the opportunities that come every day. As I said, I want to practice abundance. I want to practice sufficiency. I want to practice bianeon with my friends and the people God puts in my life. Practice each and every day. May this Eucharist strengthen us for that practice. May God be praised.